My name is Caroline Hayes, and I never imagined my 61st year would begin with a text that split my family in two. I was standing in my kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, holding a chipped mug of coffee when my phone buzzed. Steam curled up from the cup as I wiped my hand on a dish towel and picked it up. Ryan, my only son. The boy I'd worked double shifts for the one I bought a house for just this past spring. Mom, you won't be joining us for the family cruise. Lila thinks it should just be family. I read it twice, the words swimming before they sank like stones. Outside, the maple leaves scraped against the window pane. Inside, my stomach dropped so hard I had to set the mug down before it slipped. Just family. The same family whose mortgage I paid in full, whose kitchen I remodeled with my own retirement savings. I could still see the grin on Ryan's face the day I handed him the keys, hear Lila's sweet-as-honey voice promising, "You'll always have a room here, Caroline." My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. Every word I wanted to send burned hotter than the coffee cooling on the counter. I typed only one, "okay." It was shorter than the scream building in my chest, shorter than the ache spreading through my ribs. The reply came not from Ryan, but from Lila. "Hope you understand. It's just simpler this way. Simpler." My laugh was sharp and silent, the kind you swallow so it doesn't shatter. I turned toward the kitchen window, watching my own reflection blink back at me. The woman in the glass looked calm, but something inside her had shifted a small, cold click, like the sound a lock makes before a door swings shut. They thought this would be the end of it. They thought wrong. The house felt different that morning, though nothing in it had moved. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, the one I had chosen, tile by tile, paint color by paint color, and listened to the refrigerator hum. The air seemed heavier, like it was pressing down on my shoulders. The sunlight slanted across the butcher block counters I'd paid extra for touching the same bar stools where Ryan used to sit and wolf down pancakes before soccer practice. Now those chairs might as well have been museum pieces, relics of a time when I still believed I had a place here. My eyes drifted to the wall where the housewarming photo used to hang. Ryan's arm draped around Lila, her head leaning just so, both smiling like they'd built this home with their own hands. I had taken it down last week without knowing why. Now I understood. It didn't belong here anymore. I reached into the cabinet for a coffee refill and noticed the lavender curtains swaying by the window. Lila's choice. I had sewn them myself last spring because she said store-bought ones felt impersonal. The stitches were neat, even proof of the care I'd poured into this space. I set my mug down and walked slowly through the rooms. Every corner whispered a reminder of the nights I stayed late, painting walls. The afternoons I skipped lunches to meet delivery trucks, the money I spent without hesitation. Upstairs, the guest room I was promised, as always yours, was stripped bare boxes stacked against the wall. I didn't need to open them to know they were full of Lila's things. Back in the kitchen, I leaned on the counter and let the silence stretch. It wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes after a door slams. Somewhere deep in my chest, the sting of yesterday's message was cooling into something sharper. This was no longer my home. It was theirs, and they had just told me I wasn't part of family. I reached for my phone not to reply to Ryan, but to call the one person who had always known what to do when the ground shifted under my feet. Tomorrow I'd start asking questions. Margaret showed up less than an hour after I called her. She didn't ask questions on the phone, just said she was on her way. That's the thing about a friend you've known for 40 years. She can hear the crack in your voice even when you try to hide it. The screen door creaked as she stepped inside. She took one look at me and set her purse down on the counter. "Tell me," she said softly. I didn't trust my voice, so I slid the phone across the counter. She read the message in silence, her lips pressing into a line. When she was done, she exhaled slowly and shook her head. "I've been worried this was coming," she murmured. I frowned. You think this was Lila? Margaret's eyes met mine steady. Partly, but Ryan's not innocent, Caroline. You've been cushioning every fall for him since he left high school. He's never had to figure things out for himself, and she saw that. Her words landed like stones in my stomach. I opened my mouth to argue, but the truth was sitting right there between us. She was right. "You've been making yourself useful for so long," she went on. "They've forgotten you're a person. In their eyes, you're a resource. And once they've drained that resource, they'll move on." I gripped the edge of the counter, my knuckles whitening. What more could they take? I already bought the house. I've helped with Bill's renovations. "Have you checked your accounts lately?" she asked, cutting me off. The question hit me like a splash of cold water. "You let Lila handle a lot of your payments, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. She said it was easier for tax purposes. Margaret's gaze sharpened. "Caroline, you need to log into everything. Today. And if anything looks off, we go straight to a lawyer." Her certainty steadied something inside me. I took a deep breath, feeling the faintest stir of resolve. "All right," I said. "We start today." Margaret gave a single firm nod. Good. Because they're not ready for what's coming. That night, I didn't even bother trying to sleep. I sat at the kitchen table long after Margaret left the clock, ticking loud enough to fill the silence. At 1:58 a.m., I gave up the pretense, pushed my chair back, and went to get my laptop. For years, Lila had assured me she'd take care of all that confusing online stuff. She'd said it in that syrupy voice, the one meant to sound caring, but always left a faint aftertaste. I'd wanted to believe she was helping. I wanted to believe it so badly. Now my fingers hovered over the login screen, my pulse drumming in my ears. I typed in my credentials, the keys feeling heavier with each tap. The dashboard looked ordinary enough balances, routine transactions, but I knew better than to stop there. I started scrolling backward 1 month at a time. The pattern revealed itself slowly like ink, seeping across paper. Small transfers just under the threshold that would raise automatic alerts. Categories labeled as home maintenance or emergency repairs. Except I hadn't approved any repairs. Clicking deeper, I found the linked account. It wasn't in my name. It wasn't even joint. The secondary user listed was Lila Simmons Hayes. My throat tightened, but no tears came. Not this time. I clicked through each transfer, watching the amount stack up in neat, damning rows. This wasn't about a cruise. It wasn't even about hurt feelings. This was theft, deliberate and sustained. And Ryan, was he blind to it? Or had he chosen not to see as long as the bills were paid and the upgrades kept coming? I closed the laptop gently, my reflection staring back from the darkened screen. The woman looking at me wasn't shocked anymore. Her eyes were steady, calculating. They thought my trust was permanent. They thought my silence was guaranteed. But silence, I realized, could be sharpened into something dangerous. By morning, I would know exactly where I stood, and they would never see me coming. The next morning, I was parked outside David Collins's law office before the lights were even on. The old brick building sat on a quiet corner downtown, the kind of place where you could almost hear history breathing through the walls. I had known David for years. He'd handled my estate planning after Richard passed, and later the paperwork when I bought Ryan and Lila their house. When he walked in and saw me waiting, his brows lifted. "Caroline." "Is everything all right?" I followed him into his office, my heels clicking against the hardwood. "No," I said, settling into the chair opposite his desk. "And I'm here to make sure it doesn't get worse." David listened as I laid it all out. Ryan's text, Lila's follow-up, the suspicious transfers I'd found in my accounts at 2 in the morning. I slid my laptop across the desk, the spreadsheet of transactions glowing on the screen. He studied it quietly, his expression hardening. "You've got a problem, and it's bigger than a few missing checks. If she has access to your accounts, she can do more damage than this. I want to reverse the gift of the house." I said, my voice steady. "Lock down my assets. Cancel any powers of attorney in their names." He leaned back, weighing the words. "That's going to create a rift you can't undo." "They've already created it," I replied. "I've just been slow to admit it." A flicker of approval passed over his face. "Then we'll move fast. I'll start the property reversal and freeze any joint authorizations. I also want a full record of anything they've done with my accounts," I added. David nodded. I'll arrange for a forensic accountant. But you might also want a private investigator. The idea felt sharp, decisive. Do it, I said. When I left his office, the air outside felt different. I wasn't waiting for the next blow anymore. I was preparing to deliver my own. 2 days later, Ryan and Lila left for their cruise. The timing couldn't have been better. They were probably boarding with matching luggage sunglasses perched on their heads, all smiles for the vacation photos. Meanwhile, back in Ohio, I was making my own kind of preparations. That morning, I found an envelope slid under my front door. My name was written in Lila's familiar looping handwriting, the kind she used on thank you cards and Christmas gift tags. A yellow sticky note clung to the front. Just sign whenever you're ready, Caroline. It'll make things easier while we're away. I carried it to the kitchen table and sat down. The paper was thick, the kind you pay extra for at the print shop. Inside was a neat stack of legal documents. At first glance, it all looked standard updates to estate paperwork amendments for streamlining responsibilities. Lila had always been skilled at making control look like convenience. But buried in the middle, in smaller print, was the real purpose, a durable power of attorney. Permanent. Irrevocable. If I signed it, Lila would have complete authority over my finances, property, even my medical decisions. The gall of it stole my breath. They weren't content to wait for inheritance. They wanted the keys to my life right now. I placed the papers back into the envelope, careful not to bend them. My pulse was steady, almost unnervingly so. The old me might have confronted them immediately, demanded an explanation, clung to the hope of reconciliation. But that woman didn't live here anymore. Instead, I opened the top drawer of my sideboard and slid the envelope in beside my checkbook. Another piece of evidence. Another nail in the coffin they were building for themselves without realizing it. They thought their timing was perfect. They thought a week away would give me space to stew in silence. But I was already building my counterattack. 3 days into their cruise, my phone rang just after sunrise. The number belonged to Tom Alvarez, the private investigator David had recommended. His voice was steady, almost clinical, but there was a weight in it that told me what I was about to hear wasn't small. Caroline, you're going to want to sit down, he said. Lila has listed the house as collateral for a second mortgage. The paperwork was filed last week. I gripped the arm of my chair. Without my consent, she presented it as a family-owned property, transferred to her and Ryan free and clear. No mention of the conditions under which they received it. No mention of your financial involvement. The lender sees them as a safe bet. Generous family backing is how it's worded in the file. A slow burn started in my chest, not the hot, reckless anger I might have felt years ago, but something colder and far more dangerous. They weren't just taking. They were gambling with what I'd given them, piling debt on top of my gift, assuming I'd never know. Tom continued. She's also moved funds from your accounts into one, tied to her maiden name. Credit card balances have been paid down and there are deposits into an investment account you're not listed on. I glanced toward the sideboard drawer where the envelope sat. I've got paperwork from her that would have handed her full control, I said. She slipped it under my door before they left. That's good, he replied. It strengthens the pattern financial positioning while you're distracted or unavailable. We'll compile it all. By the time I hung up, my coffee had gone cold. I poured it down the sink, watching the swirl disappear. This was no longer about salvaging a relationship. It was about protecting myself from people who had worn the word family like camouflage. And I wasn't going to warn them. Not yet. The quiet was mine now, and I intended to use it. By the end of that week, everything was in motion. David had the reversal of the house gift ready for my signature. The asset freezes were already in place, and Tom's reports painted a picture even I hadn't fully grasped. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every transfer Lila had made under my name was laid out in black and white. It was a record of betrayal so meticulous it could have been a business plan. The final step came on Friday morning. I sat in David's conference room with a notary at one end of the table, the sale contract for the house in front of me. A cash buyer had made an offer 2 days earlier, clean no contingencies, immediate closing. David had moved fast to push it through. Once I signed, the house would no longer be theirs to leverage, refinance, or decorate with things I'd paid for. It would belong to someone else entirely, and the proceeds would be locked in an account only I could touch. I picked up the pen, my hand steady. Page after page, signature after signature, each stroke of ink felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I hadn't realized I'd lost. When it was done, David gathered the paperwork and gave a short nod. "It's yours again, Carolyn. And now it's sold. They can't touch a thing." Outside, the sky was heavy with early spring clouds, the kind that threatened rain without committing. I walked to my car without looking back at the building. The weight in my chest was gone, replaced by something sharper focus. In 4 days, Ryan and Lila would be home expecting to step back into a house they believed was still theirs. They'd never think to imagine the locks changed, the deed transferred, the money moved far beyond their reach. They had gambled with my gift. Now I was gambling with their future. The morning they came back was bright and deceptively calm. I parked my car a block away and watched from the shade of a tall elm tree as Ryan's SUV turned onto the street. Their luggage was piled in the back, and both of them were tanned, relaxed, the kind of glow you get from cocktails and ocean air. They pulled into the driveway and stopped short. 2 unfamiliar cars were already there, along with a moving truck. A young couple stood on the porch, keys in hand, talking to a realtor. Lila stepped out first, sunglasses perched on her head. "What is this?" she barked, her voice cutting through the morning quiet. Ryan glanced around, spotting me as I walked slowly toward them. "Mom, what's going on?" His tone was half confusion, half something else, wariness. I stopped at the edge of the driveway. "You won't have to worry about managing anything for me anymore," I said evenly. Lila's face flushed. "What does that mean?" From my bag, I pulled a thick folder and handed it to Ryan. He flipped through the pages, house reversal sale documents, bank statements, copies of every unauthorized transfer. His shoulders slumped as the color drained from his face. Lila snatched the folder from him, scanning quickly, her breathing picking up. "This won't hold up," she snapped. "We were helping you. You'll regret this when you calm down." "Helping?" I said, my voice low. "You mean siphoning my accounts, gambling with debt on a house you didn't own, slipping power of attorney papers under my door while you were halfway across the ocean?" Ryan looked at her, then something like doubt in his eyes. "Lila, what did you do?" She turned on him. "Don't you dare put this on me. You were fine with it when the money was coming in." I let the silence hang until it felt heavy enough to settle between us. Then I spoke the truth they'd avoided for too long. "You gambled with my trust," I said, "and you lost." Lila's mouth opened like she had more to say, but nothing came out. Ryan stared down at the folder in his hands as if the papers might rearrange themselves into a different story. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who ran to me with scraped knees, who believed I could fix anything. But that boy was long gone, and I wasn't here to rescue the man standing in front of me. "This isn't revenge," I said quietly. "It's protection." For the first time in years, I'm protecting myself. Lila's voice cracked into a sneer. "You think you've won, but you'll end up alone." I felt the corners of my mouth lift. Alone is better than being used. Without another word, I turned and walked away. My shoes crunched over the driveway gravel, each step pulling me farther from the weight I'd carried for far too long. I didn't look back. By the time I reached my car, the moving truck's ramp rattled as the new owners carried boxes inside boxes that would fill rooms once claimed by people who thought I'd never say no. I drove home slowly, the late afternoon sun sliding across my windshield. My new apartment was modest, nothing like the sprawling house I'd given away, but it was mine in every sense of the word. No shared names on the mailbox, no hidden accounts, no strings. Inside, the air was still and safe. I set my keys on the counter, made a cup of tea, and let the quiet settle in around me. Not the heavy, suffocating kind I'd felt before, but a quiet that felt earned. The The phone buzzed once on the table. "Ryan, Mom, please, can we talk? I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you." I turned the phone face down and walked to the window. Outside, I could hear children laughing somewhere down the street. The sound made me smile. They thought I couldn't live without them. The truth was I'd been suffocating under them for years. Quiet doesn't mean weak. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it.